Hello, my name is Olu Osha. I enjoy talking about American presidents, and I want to conclude my discussion on our 36th president, Lyndon Johnson, and I'm going to use that to segue into our 35th president, JFK, John F. Kennedy, um, whose presidency, unfortunately, is pretty much shrouded in controversy due to his assassination. He didn't conclude his full term, and so uh, due to a number of controversies as well, his presidency is often marred in tons of controversy. Even though he's routinely also ranked as amongst America's best presidents because of his ambitious program to land us on the moon, and of course civil rights, which were both things that Lyndon Johnson was able to consummate. He was able to uh, materialize during his presidency. Of course, you know the controversies he started off his presidency with. I'm talking about JFK, included the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion, in which he precipitantly decided to authorize the CIA's invasion of Cuba in order to overthrow Castro, which of course was foiled. And of course, there's the Cuban crisis, the standoff with the Soviets, and which, of course, with the end of his presidency, with his assassination by Lee Harvey Oswald. And of course, uh, I'm going to start off anyway with the controversies, the discredited conspiracy theories that Lyndon Baines Johnson had uh, something to do with the assassination of President Kennedy. Now, of course, this is discredited, and of course, there's no truth to it. Um, there's no truth to it whatsoever. I had pointed out that if we had just because of the nature of our system, right, we have a democratic republic. If we had some kind of cabal that had it within its power to assassinate and topple our its principle, which is our president, which the American people have elected into office, then why would that cabal risk its existence in a very combustible nation? Remember, Americans have the right to bear arms. Americans are combustible. Remember what Alexander Hamilton said about the masses. He called them a great beast that were fickle, and they're unpredictable. So they have guns. If there's this cabal that exists, and the American people believe that somehow they've usurped, the presidency and assassinated the president that they elected into office, what are they going to do to that cabal? We have from literature, from history actually, what happened when the senators killed Caesar, the dictator that they said was a tyrant. They thought the masses would be happy. The masses ended up tearing apart some of the senators. He attacked the senators, killed them, and they went berserk. So I don't think the CIA or any government agency or any cabal in America would be that stupid. If you had such a cabal that has the power to actually unseat an American president, then they would immediately do away with the charade of elections, the popular vote, so they don't risk their lives and their existence. Just like when we go into Roman history as again, remember in the beginning of of Rome, they had the regal period, the reign of kings from about 753 to 509, BC, for about 2 centuries. And the Romans got tired of the reign of kings. They did away with kings, and they had a republic. They had no kings, no emperor, right? They had the rule of the patricians, right? during the era of the Republic. Of course, again, uh, when Caesar, who had de facto power, right, did still fell short of immediately just assuming de jure power. De jure means by right, according to law. Instead, he was using de facto power, right? Everybody knew he was virtually like a king or an emperor, but he was not using the title. He was still pretending, right? What did the senators do? They killed him, right? They assassinated him. And so no cabal would risk its life. When his heir, that's Augustus, his great nephew, came into power, he knew he had to do away with the pretense, and he made himself emperor. He arrogated all power to himself by law, right? So nobody could. He became the state. Anybody who tried to assassinate him was committing treason. So that cabal, if there was such an agency within the United States government that conspired to assassinate our president John F. Kennedy, then that cabal would have committed treason, right? Someday they may be outed, and their lives would be at risk, right? So why would any cabal, if they're intelligent enough to pull it off, risk their lives and not just have de jure power, right? They'd have de jure power instead of de facto power, because their existence, their lives would be at risk. So that's not the case. Nobody within the United States agency, the United States government, was involved in killing President John F. Kennedy. Lee Harvey Oswald was the one who killed him. He's an ex-Marine, and of course he's an unstable person. He was an unstable person, which we have in America. We have many unstable people who are renegades. They do things on their own. They're lone wolves. They have, from the beginning of Americans' founding, we've had these lone wolves who are crazy. They're unpredictable, they're combustible, and they take matters into their own hands. The first assassination attempt was under Andrew Jackson. Well, when Andrew Jackson was president, he survived it. Interestingly, I think the gun misfired, or the guy missed, or whatever. But Andrew Jackson used his cane and beat the guy up, right? He was president then. And since then, we had the assassination of, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the assassination of James Garfield by a crazy guy who wanted a job in the Federal Civil Service, and thought Garfield owed him. And of course, we had the assassination of McKinley by an anarchist. We've had, and of course, then the assassination of JFK. So you see prior assassinations, and of course, Reagan. There was an assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan while he was president. He survived that. The lunatic McKinley or McClinley, or whatever his name was. In fact, I'm not gonna. I don't want to credit these lunatics, by mentioning their names anyway. But the thing is, we have these lone wolf figures in America just because America is a very violent society. People can be, combustible, and we just have these lone wolf figures. As a mental illness is a huge problem in America as well. People just don't think well, and there's a tremendous amount of hubris. Some people do it for fame because they want to have fame, and but the thing that's sort of different about Lee Harvey Oswald is that when you see these other people, assassins, who killed the president or attempted to kill the president, they don't deny it, right? Because they want it's their 15-minute shot of fame. Lee Harvey Oswald, of course, he only lived for about 2 days after he did it. He denied it. He called himself a patsy, right? He didn't, which was odd. He didn't take credit for it. But I'm going to get into that later on. But let me quickly get into why it is assumed that, which is discredited, that LBJ, it is assumed that LBJ may have been involved in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, his principal. Of course, again, this has been discredited. first of all, probably has to do with the personality of Lyndon Johnson, right? Lyndon Johnson was viewed as some kind of a wheeler dealer figure, right? As a senator, he seemed to be somebody who, again, he would browbeat his opponents. He would threaten, intimidate, do everything strong arm just to get his way. And he had a very successful batting record in the Senate, by the way. And so, he was Senate majority leader. And so, just having that sort of strong, aggressive personality that, you always want to win. I think people were suspicious of him and viewed him sort of like a snake oils man who sort of had shady dealings and everything. And of course, his wealth. He came from poverty, and of course, he became a very wealthy man. By the time of his death, his estate was about $130 million in 2022 money, 2022 or 2024 money anyway. But back then, it was over $20 million, which is a lot of money. A tremendous amount of money for a senator, a man who spent his entire life as a public servant, right? So especially it was assumed that his wife it was assumed that JFK was reluctant about getting involved in wars. He didn't want to escalate the Vietnam War. He didn't want to get into any form of wars, and that the military industrial complex, which there were claims and rumors that President Lyndon Johnson's wife had an interest in, wanted the escalation of wars so that they could make money. There's this claim, this rumor, which is there's no evidence to support it. That President Johnson's wife owned a company that made helicopters and other arms for the U.S. military. This it's a conspiracy theorist who touts this. There's no evidence, and so they claim that he wanted an escalation of hostilities because he was making money, was directly benefiting from the escalation of wars in Vietnam. But of course, this is not true. He was trying to show U.S. military strength, especially with the assassination of JFK, and of course, he was trying to contain communism. So that's been discredited. That he was directly benefiting from a company that was making arms during the Vietnam War. Another thing, though, is regarding his character and his personality was his military record, right? John F. Kennedy was a Purple Heart. He was a war hero. He actually sustained injuries, saving his crew after his boat had been shot down, and he swam, carrying his crew to safety, of course, and he won a Purple Heart. By the way, he's the only U.S. president ever to have won a Purple Heart. By contrast, people find LBJ's military medal. He won a Silver Star. They find his military record questionable. He had been a congressman at that time, and so he volunteered, and so he was sent on behalf of President Roosevelt on a fact-finding mission to the Pacific. And so the aircraft he was on, was ostensibly shot at, and so he was just like he was not, he was a Navy reserve. He was a reserve at the time. He was volunteering, as a Navy reserve. I think he was some kind of lieutenant commander, but he was not there. He was just there on a fact-finding mission on behalf of the president. And so they said their craft really had a mechanical fault, and they turned back. What makes it questionable is that what makes the award of the medal questionable is that he was the only person who received a medal. He received a Silver Star, which he wore throughout, for the rest of his life, throughout his presidency, on his jacket lapel. And so people claim that he only got that medal because he was a congressman, especially was awarded by the controversial General Douglas MacArthur, who liked to pander to politicians and, congressmen anyway, because he had political ambitions. So, of course, because Americans found his personality and character questionable, of course, they were always going to point fingers at him as being involved, especially since once Kennedy was killed, he was the one who was going to directly benefit. And the other reason also is because of the Texas oil interest, right? Unfortunately, Kennedy was assassinated right in his backyard in Texas, right? LBJ was a Texan. He was had been a senator from Texas, represented Texas, and President Kennedy was killed in Dallas, Texas, right? And it was rumored, it was known, whatever, that President Kennedy intended to increase an oil depletion allowance, which is sort of a depreciation. Seems like a depreciation tax on extracting mineral resources on oil. So they said with his assassination, that oil depletion allowance was not changed from 27.5% what it was, and it saved the oil industry about $100 million. So the rumors are that because of money, that there was probably some kind of cabal or conspiracy to have John F. Kennedy assassinated, and LBJ was to benefit by representing the interests of this oil cabal. Again, there's no truth to this rumor. My name is Olu Osha. It's raining right now. It's drizzling. I will continue with my discussion on the conspiracy theories surrounding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, our 36th president. I also draw attention to call of law violations, pivoting on subordination of perjury and fraud on the courts in Montgomery County, Maryland, which are intended to obstruct justice concerning an EEOC and Office of Inspector General complaints that I had filed concerning fraud and misconduct in the Department of Defense and Department of the Navy. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.